So type of bills, there are different types of bills in the Indian Parliament. There's the ordinary bill, there's a money bill, there's a financial bill, there's a constitutional amendment bill. And all these three bills require separate processes, okay? Money bill cannot be introduced in the Rajya Sabha. Money is strictly controlled by the Lok Sabha. But ordinary bill, financial bill, and constitutional amendment bill, the rest of the three bills can be introduced in both the houses. Okay, it can be introduced in both the houses, but ordinary bill and financial bill has different rules. It has very similar rules, whereas constitutional amendment bill is strictly separate. It's mentioned in Article 368 of the Indian Constitution. Article 368 of the Indian Constitution, constitutional amendment bill is a bill that intends to change the Constitution of India, whereas financial bill is related to finance. Okay, any expenses that may be incurred for certain purposes, projects or schemes or anything related to this comes under financial bill. But under financial bill, there is another specific type of bill, which is the money bill. Okay, money bill are bills that intends to take money out from the Consolidated Fund of India, the Treasury. Main puisa thakala chakara la money bill ase. So here, what you need to understand is that money bill can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha. The rest of the three bills can be introduced in both the houses. Okay, the rest of the bills can be introduced in both the houses. Now, money bill. A bill is a money bill if it deals exclusively with taxation, government borrowing, Consolidated Fund of India, Contingency Fund of India, appropriation of money. Now, Contingency Fund of India, I mentioned that it's an emergency fund which is given to the President of India. What is the amount? 500 crores. Okay, and taxation, you know it. Government borrowing, whenever they borrow money from different countries, and in the economic subject, you will learn everything in detail. Okay, capital receipt, capital expenditure, revenue receipt, revenue expenditure. Putu charta as a capital or revenue as a capital means whatever the money the Indian government has. It may be borrowing, it may be assets that they have. And then revenue means something that continuously, it's a recurring transaction, something that continuously comes to the treasury of the central government. Okay, so we will be learning about capital and revenue, receipt as well as expenditure. Now, just to give you an example, Indian government ba third dishe na. Indian government ba third diya, let's say 1 crore dishe. Now that 1 crore is capital. No, capital as a 1 crore de interest पाया जाए monthly ताई दो तो उधर दी income हो जाए दो revenue हो जाए दो. So capital दो दिशे गुले दो उधर पैसा दिशे गुले loan करने दिशे गुले दो तो loan amount itself is capital. It will be considered as capital expenditure. Okay, but the income that they get will be under the revenue section. Revenue receipt. Receipt means something that you got. Okay, something that you got. Revenue receipt. Now, when the company that took the loan from Indian government pays back the loan, the capital loan, okay, loan capitally I so the capital la receipt I not revenue. Revenue means the loan by interest kama that the revenue charge. So that's how the separation is. Okay, when it comes to budget, Indian budget, you will learn more about it in economics. I cannot waste too much time explaining the details of the money bill and so forth, but you need to know that anything related to taxation, government borrowing, Consolidated Fund of India, Contingency Fund of India, appropriation of money, that is considered as money bill. Now, appropriation of money is just the right that you need to spend, to take money out from the Consolidated Fund of India. If there's any bill that intends to take money out from the Consolidated Fund of India, it's known as appropriation bill. Okay. And Contingency Emergency Fund, Consolidated Fund of India, the main treasury, the main puisa, okay, treasure box of the Union government is known as Consolidated Fund of India. And then government borrowing, manu lahat pa thar luisu bole do, or taxation. Okay, that's considered a money bill. But in the end, if there's a confusion whether it's a money bill or not a money bill, sometimes it could not be a money bill. Okay, sometimes Modi ji, like I said yesterday, since money bill can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha to bypass the scrutiny of Rajya Sabha, he tries to marks it, he tries to slip it inside an envelope of money bill, whereas inside it's not a money bill. Now, who decides whether it is a money bill or not a money bill? The Speaker of the Lok Sabha. And who is the Speaker of the Lok Sabha? A loyalist of BJP. Okay, that's how politics is played in the center. Financial bill versus money bill. Again, very important distinction. Financial bill is mentioned in Article 117, money bill 110. Okay, money bill deals only with financial matters, whereas financial bill contains financial and non-financial provisions. You will learn about that in detail. ठीक पैसा फिलौले लाना एकता थाके उतो दो money bill हो जाए, but financial दो something related to finances but doesn't require, let's say for example there is a finance ministry. Okay, finance ministry, they wish to make certain changes to the overall structure. It doesn't require spending money from the CFI, Consolidated Fund of India, but that's something related to finances, so it will be considered a financial bill. Okay, so it's considered a non-financial provision, but anything related to finances, it comes under financial bill. But poisa ulawale na utu karne money bill as well. Okay, poisa ulawale. That's why money bill is used. Now the speaker certifies, whereas for the financial bill, no certification required. So financial bill complications eko na thake de Indian Parliament de eko na thake. It's very easy, but money bill to poisa chulawale la so crores ulawale so tade hai koi na kun ba question kore do na. So inaze Rajya Sabha has limited role, but Rajya Sabha has greater legislative powers. It doesn't have greater legislative powers. Okay, it has greater legislative powers than it has when it comes to money bill. It's just a comparison between the power of Rajya Sabha in Lok Sabha and in relation to money bill and financial bill. Every money bill is a financial bill, right? I mentioned earlier, but every financial bill is not a money bill. Okay. Now, ordinary bill procedure. Now, in that ordinary bill procedure, the procedure is very lamba. Okay, the first reading, we have the second reading, we have the committee stage, we have the third reading, we have the other house, we have the president's assent, then it becomes an act. Okay, an ordinary bill is a bill dealing with any matter other than a money bill. Okay, so other than a money bill or a constitutional amendment bill, or let's say financial bill, utu tinta. Other than that, it's an ordinary bill. Financial bill, money bill, constitutional amendment bill, utu separate categories. And then we had the ordinary bill, right? I provided 4 categories of types of bills. So anything other than money bill, and that's the only way that we can define ordinary bill. Okay, in the examination, if you were asked this question, define ordinary bill. Okay, ordinary bill is any bill introduced in Indian Parliament other than constitutional amendment bill, financial bill, money bill. Okay, so it can be introduced either in the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. Now, the process I will explain it to you, but bill introduced which now first, second, committee stage, third reading, scrutinization and all that analysis, and last day, once it's approved, let's say it was introduced in the Lok Sabha. Okay, once the third reading completes, it is sent to the other house, and even the other house needs to approve it, and once the approval is done, it is sent to the president. Then the president's assent is received. After the president's assent is received, it becomes an act. Okay, the bill becomes an act. So before it becomes an act, during the entire process, it is considered a bill. So in first stage, okay, the bill is introduced. So a minister or a private member can introduce the bill. Private member means any member of the parliament that is not a minister is known as a private member. Private member of the Indian Parliament are those members that do not hold minister portfolios. Okay, so private member or minister can introduce it in either house of the parliament, and it can be introduced either in the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. So this is just the introduction of the bill. Okay, let's say for example the government decides to establish a new university, so they will give the bill detailing all the project plans and everything. They will introduce it in the house. Okay, well, let's say it's Lok Sabha. Okay, let's say it's Lok Sabha. Now Lok Sabha they say the first reading. In the first reading, no detailed discussion takes place. Eko detail ba khota nokre. It's just to let them know, oh, asede with the bill asede amni kan bi ekbar sai sabi. Na with the first reading though, just a simple reception of a copy of the bill. Copy received korala. That's called first reading. Everyone gets a copy each within that house. Let's say it's Lok Sabha, and so utu sahabi chile do the house will grant the permission. First reading there. Saigana do oh do tiki ase. So I say yes. Let's introduce it. Koina introduce it. Now in the second reading, this is the longest part. Okay, second reading they do take tak lamba jai. We have we have the general discussion. The first stage is a general discussion. In the second reading, general discussion and then the members they will debate the principles, the moral perspective, and so forth of the bill, whether it is right, whether it is wrong. Okay, is the bill necessary? What are its advantages and disadvantages? All this general discussion is conducted in the second reading. And within the second reading, the next stage of the general discussion is the committee stage. Okay, the committee stage, and the committee will analyze it. Right, the committee will. There will be a separate committee. The committee. There's a lot of committees. Okay, in the Indian Parliament, committees related to finances, committees related to infrastructure, committee related to administration, and so forth. Now, whichever committee is suitable for analyzing the bill, that bill will be analyzed. Okay. Now, and then the third reading, second reading below general discussion, a very lamba jora process, and then it goes to the committee stage. The committee stage will analyze it, and then the third reading is a final stage. Okay, only a brief discussion takes place in that stage. In the third reading, the House votes on the bill as a whole. Okay, that's when the voting is done. Third reading there. Third reading the voting group. Once it's approved, it is sent to the other house. Let's say it is sent to the Rajya Sabha, right? Then now the Rajya Sabha can either send back the bill for reconsideration, or they can reject the bill, or they can accept the bill, right? These are the three options that the Rajya Sabha has. Now let's say the Rajya Sabha accepted the bill. Since it's a very good bill, both the houses support it, Rajya Sabha accept Krushe, it is sent to the president for his assent, and now you know it becomes an act. Very simple process, right? Very simple process. So, and there are some instances in which there's disagreement between the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. To keep the president will conduct a joint sitting of the Indian Parliament. Okay, joint sitting. Taijumbi Jama Guru. So who presides? In that case, who presides? Rajya Sabha la presiding officer kun ase the vice president. Lok Sabha la presiding officer do the speaker. Now who will preside over the joint sitting? It's a speaker. Okay, it's a speaker of the Lok Sabha that will preside the joint sitting. Aru the joint sitting de itiadak lok thakishe bole do pass koro na parbo. But usually joint sitting takaram de hwa do hoije. Now, budget and financial procedure. Budget. Okay. When we talk about the budget, its official name is Annual Financial Statement. Never forget that, okay? Annual Financial Statement. The official name of the Indian budget is Annual Financial Statement. Okay? Annual Financial Statement. It is introduced every year in the month of Feb. It was actually introduced in the month of March, okay? But then they felt that Feb was the right month. since the financial year, it starts from, it ends in the month of March, right? Phalguna and then Chaitra, the month of April. April 1st is January 1 for the Indian government, the new year. So, time iman na thage, which is why tan Feb day budget to declare kuride. Now, that budget will entail all the future expenditure for the next 1 year. Next 1 year like expenditure kiki ase, and then budget allocation gan kiki kan ase. So big kurigina declare go. Now before that, processes kan to thake na. The finance department will try to see which ministry will get that share, which ministry will get that share. There's a term called demand for grant. Okay, demand for grant means these are requests made by each department. Let's say Health and Family Welfare La Ministry, they will request a demand for grant. They will submit a report, demand for grant of so and so. Like let's say we need 30,000 crores for infrastructural development, this and that. And so this demand for grants will be considered, analyzed. There's this committee called Estimates Committee in the Indian Parliament. They will analyze, calculate everything, and then budget will be there. With the budget, they sub declare MGNREJ ke liye 86,000 crore. 86,000 crore is the number last year's number for MGNREJ. So alag scheme kan garne, alag ministry garne, with the budget there. So big for the next 1 year, kiki expenditure it is contained in that budget, and the union budget will consist of revenue budget and capital budget. Okay, revenue budget and capital budget. Now parliamentary approval with the budget to general discussion conduct parliament day, voting on demand for grants, right? Voting on demand for grants. Like I said, demand for grants are requests made by the different ministries, okay? Tan amount kan mangiwo, and then appropriation bill. What is appropriation bill? I mentioned earlier. Appropriation bill means Consolidated Fund of India la puisa ulaule la bill sige. That's appropriation bill. Appropriation bill will contain something like so and so is given the right to take money out from the CFI, Consolidated Fund of India. So it's a bill that simply gives right to the Council of Ministers to draw money out from the CFI, Consolidated Fund of India. I will be using the term CFI, okay? Central Puisado. Now appropriation bill and then it becomes a finance bill, okay? Budget. So that's a very simple process. General discussion tagiwa, voting tagiwa on demand for grants, and then appropriation bill, and then finance bill. Now parliamentary committees. Again, parliamentary committees, please take a look at standing committee, ad hoc committee, and importance. Okay. Now standing committees are permanent committees, whereas ad hoc committees means emergency time they are created for temporary purposes, and once their purpose has been fulfilled, they are dissolved. Okay. Kita ba ulay committee kanna. We also talked about state reorganization committee, Fazal Ali Commission. That's also an ad hoc committee. It was created simply for the purpose of trying to demarcate states on the basis of either language or administrative convenience or whatsoever. Abni law body as a reorganize the states. It's based on the State Reorganization Commission SRC that the states were created. Right, initially 1956 SRC, State Reorganization Act. So that's an example of ad hoc committee. Okay, standing committee means permanent as it's in the Indian Parliament. Standing committee, Public Accounts Committee, Estimates Committee, Committee on Public Undertakings, and department related standing committees. Now please take a look at all these 6 and then I will explain it. So there's Public Accounts Committee, there's Estimates Committee, there's Committee on Public Undertakings. Okay. Now Public Accounts Committee, can you guys like look at it and guess the definition, what its purpose is? So, Public Accounts Committee though, past law, it's the past, and then Estimates Committee is the future, okay? That's how you can perceive, to help you understand better. Public Accounts Committee, it checks how the money was spent, okay? And then Estimates Committee will make an estimation of how the money should be spent. Right? So Estimates Committee the future pabigina kore, Public Accounts Committee though, the past 1 year, kiki expenses can kurigena, or even beyond 1 year, if the scheme continues on, the fund for a particular scheme continues on, even for maybe 20 years, they'll check that. But how the money was spent is entirely done by Public Accounts Committee. Okay, they will look at all the money taken out of the public accounts, and then this committee will scrutinize, will analyze how the money was spent. Estimates Committee will look at future spending. Okay, it examines the budget estimates before the money is spent, and only after the estimation of the Estimates Committee, the money is spent. Okay, and they can also suggest ways to reduce spending, to be more efficient, right, and so forth. So, for Public Accounts Committee, let's say the Parliament sanctions 500 crores for constructing national highways. Okay, the Comptroller and Auditor General, he's the one that does the accounting, right? So his report will be analyzed by Public Accounts Committee, and then they find that out of 500 crore, 450 crore, but 50 crore it was spent on unrelated works. They will question the CAG, they will question the ministry, they will question the contractors. Why did you spend 50 crore on unrelated works? Okay, that's how like the government makes sure that the money was spent well. Now don't check pure. Okay, and then Estimates Committee though, how to spend money in the future. Okay, so the ministry, let's say a ministry, it proposes 2,000 crore, like I said, demand for grant, let's say it proposes 2,000 crore for a new scheme. And then the Estimates Committee will look at it and say, 100 crore for these, for subsidy, I think we should make it 50 crores. The farmers, they don't need too much subsidy in that aspect, they need more insurance, so let's pay the premium for the insurance instead of the subsidy. Inala Estimates Committee estimate correct. So now you understand how important these two bodies are. Now, Committee on Public Undertakings. Okay, what is PSU, Public Sector Undertakings? We call it PSU or PU. Public Sector Undertakings, it's Committee on Public Undertakings, it checks public sector undertakings. Now, what are public sector undertakings? These are companies, okay, private companies. Public, it's public, but these are companies in which the government owns more than 50% share. More than 50% share. These are PSUs, okay. We have the ONGC, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, okay. ONGC is the company that supplies, that handles oil and petroleum in India, okay. ONGC, very dangor company ase, oil and petroleum la. So oil and natural gas la. So ONGC, tayo laga utu company kina jaya ase, directors kan kina ase, what are the performances and so forth. Every PSU that we have here in India, everything, SAIL, SAIL, ONGC, and so forth, all these companies will be checked by the Committee on Public Undertakings. Now, you get the bujas na, almost so cover grass. Now, we also have DRSC, which means Department Related Standing Committees. Department Related Standing Committees, though, every department garne committee panaigina ase, aro in Indian Parliament. It includes the members of the Parliament as well as some experts, okay? Department Related Standing Committees. The department examine gure. Very easy to understand, right? Public Accounts Committee. These are all members of the Indian Parliament, okay? Indian Parliament la members can choose kurubo, Public Accounts Committee there members hobo, Estimates Committee the members hobo, Committee on Public Undertakings karne members choose kurubo, DRSC karne members choose kurubo. All these are members of the Parliament. right? They belong to different committees. Okay, so these are standing committees. Committees that stay permanent. Itu permanent as itu charter. Whereas ad hoc committee, there's select committee, there's joint parliamentary committee. Now ad hoc to temporary karne as now, which means once its purpose is done, itu do dissolve koribo. Now there's select committee and there's joint parliamentary committee. Now select committee is individual. Joint means eki logot aha. That's the only thing. Okay. Ad hoc committees. Now the importance. Please please read through it. The importance of parliamentary committees. It examines bills in detail, it improves legislative efficiency, it ensures executive accountability, conduct detailed financial scrutiny. Now in the third point, I want to emphasize on the third point, ensures executive accountability. In what way does it ensure executive accountability in these committees? In what ways can you find it relatable? Now executive accountability, who are the executive? Let's take an example of the Council of Ministers, right? The Council of Ministers, Dharmendra Pradhan. Dharmendra Pradhan do education la minister ase. To education la minister hoy kina paper leak hwa do question kurishi to. Kile paper leak kushi? Kile udu phal ba kora nai hoina committee ba question kurishi to dage. Bujhi na? So Indian udu nishna executive accountability. Dharmendra Pradhan is an executive. Okay, so it ensures executive accountability. Okay. Dharmendra Pradhan was held responsible for leaking the paper, right? India like that. So that's just a very simple example. And then also for select committee, in select committee and joint parliamentary committee means select committee do Lok Sabha Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha Rajya Sabha, and usually it's for one bill. Whereas joint parliamentary committee do it could be one or more bills, but Lok Sabha Rajya Sabha eki logot committee form grade joint parliamentary committee. For certain cases they formed joint parliamentary committee. Okay, they formed a committee during the Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2019 as well regarding citizenship. The committee be formed as a joint parliamentary committee, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. Now we come to the Supreme Court of India. I have given you guys a basic explanation on the Supreme Court of India, so I will not be explaining the basics. The Supreme Court, it protects the Constitution, like I said in our pre-foundation class. It acts as a final court of appeal. Final court of appeal means, for example, you were convicted, okay, and arrested for, let's say, murder, but you did not commit the murder. But then the sessions judge, the district judge, right, the sessions district judge, it gave you a sentence of, let's say, 20 years, and you went and you appealed to the High Court. High Court probably would not. Okay, High Court but ulta life sentence this job again. The last option to Supreme Court as well. So this is why it is known as the final court of appeal. Okay, and it settles disputes between governments, state governments, Assam government, Nagaland government, so lot disputes kando Supreme Court, and it also interprets laws. Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. We talked about freedom of press being part of Article 21. It is not mentioned in the Indian Constitution, but it is the Supreme Court that interprets laws, okay? And then the Supreme Court has interpreted Article 21 in such a way that Article 21 contains a lot of things. We talked about right to livelihood, right to dignity, right to privacy, and so forth. Right to freedom of press. Everything comes under right to life and personal liberty, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Now, who interpreted it? The Supreme Court, okay? And it protects fundamental rights, right? Protection, how is fundamental rights protected? Through Article 32. The issue of writs, habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari writ, and quo warranto. Okay, these are the 5 writs that the Supreme Court can use to protect our fundamental rights. So the Supreme Court is known as the guardian of the Constitution and the final interpreter of the Constitution. Okay, who is known as the final interpreter of the Indian Constitution? This question was asked. Okay, in the previous exam, not NPSC. I think it was APSC, Assam Public Service Commission. Which of the following is known as the final interpreter of the Constitution? Please don't write Indian Parliament or the Indian government. The answer is Supreme Court. The composition and appointment of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court consists of the Chief Justice of India and other judges, number determined by the Parliament. It's approximately around 30, okay? It goes up, it goes down. 30 to 34 majority thake. The Chief Justice of India and the rest of the judges. And appointment appointed by the President of India based on collegium system. Collegium system means for the appointment, okay, the Supreme Court, a group of Supreme Court judges will gather together to choose a new judge. Okay, let's say one judge is retired, the rest of the judges will gather and then will choose a judge. So which means it takes away the power of the government to appoint judges. Kilo will the Modi will appoint Kushugula example. The judge to Modi ki favor brother. It doesn't make sense. Before 1993, I believe the 3 judges case ko ina ekta case ase. I don't 92 or 3, but I'm 90% sure it's 1993. The Uttu Pichide, after that case, it was a very intense case, and after that case, it started the system of collegium system in which only the judges of the Supreme Court will decide the next judge of the Supreme Court, the new judge of the Supreme Court. They will be the ones to choose, okay, not the Prime Minister. Appointment will obviously be done by the President after the candidate has been chosen. Now there are different qualifications. A person must be a citizen of India. If you wish to be a Supreme Court, you need to have served as a High Court judge for at least 5 years. High Court la judge at least 5 years. Advocate in a High Court for at least 10 years, or be a distinguished jurist in the opinion of the President. Okay, be a distinguished jurist in the opinion of the President. Even if you haven't served as a High Court judge or practiced as an advocate in High Court for at least 10 years, if in the opinion of the President you are a distinguished jurist, you have a special entry, okay? That's something, that's also one of the powers of the President. Independence of the judiciary. Now, how is the judiciary independent? Independent means how is it protected from the executive and the legislature? How does it protect itself, or what are the constitutional features that protect the judiciary? That's called independence of the judiciary, which means judiciary is independent of the control of the central government. Constitutional safeguards, security of tenure, right? It cannot be removed before the end of the tenure. That's one. Fixed service conditions. The service condition isn't flexible. It's fixed, okay? Salaries charged on the CFI. Salaries government ba khushi dianoi Consolidated Fund of India ba pai. Na aro difficult removal procedure, very difficult to remove, okay? Again, another special majority case. That's another special majority case. Independent judicial administration. The judicial administration is independent of the control of, let's say, the central government. I already mentioned judicial administration, including the appointment of judges and so forth, right? The judicial review, everything. Government lahat pra safe as there. Allah say it is well protected. Why is judicial independence important? To ensure impartial justice. Like I said, if one of the judges is appointed by Narendra Modi, that judge will favor Narendra Modi. So judicial independence is important to ensure impartial justice, to protect fundamental rights, to maintain the rule of law, and to uphold constitutional supremacy. Okay? No one is above the Indian Constitution. It is the Supreme Court that protects and declares that the Constitution is above everything, including the ruling government. If there were no Supreme Court, the ruling government could do anything it wants, right? It could amend the Indian constitution in such a way that it stops being a democratic, a republic. No, it is a Supreme Court, okay? Even if the central government passes a bill, the constitution, the Supreme Court interpreted the Indian constitution and the amending power of the Indian constitution, Article 368, the Supreme Court interpreted Article 368 as giving the right to the central government to change the Indian constitution, but it cannot change the basic structure doctrine of the Indian constitution, the basic nature, and if it does so, then the Supreme Court will strike down that bill, will strike down that act. It's clearly mentioned. Okay, so that's another point to remember. Now, what is the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court? Original jurisdiction, appellate, advisory, review, curative. Please go through it first. So original, appellate, advisory, review, curative, jurisdiction. Now, for curative, it's a little complicated, but the rest I think is very easy to understand. Original jurisdiction, disputes between center and state, which means original means for any matter relating to center and states, they can directly approach the Supreme Court. Okay, but for petty issues such as Murgi Chor Ushe, Gorba, you cannot go to Supreme Court, okay? You cannot go to Supreme Court. Murgi Chor Haganido. Na original jurisdiction na Murgi Chor Haganido. So big cases karne ekla direct jaw bare. And appellate means appeal na High Court para District Court pa inya appeal appeals from the High Court. District Court para direct Supreme Court jaw na pare. High Court jawa lage, and only the appeals from the High Court la judgment apni satisfy hoa nai. Murgi chor hoile idu to appellate la under de to jawa parubo. High Court pa puse apni la murgi manuwa chor ga fine da apni 1000 bishi mangi ase, and then you say that moi tel bishi phelaise ki kan chor bisaule jaise na haro abi kini se chor ge maru bole so for expenses bishi uje 1000 to thik ase aru ide sabi Guwahati tak ado kiman khorja ho train ticket so forth. But then again, High Court 1,000 ekla penalty fine mangi bi guje. You can go to the Supreme Court, okay? Under the appellate jurisdiction, you can. And then advisory jurisdiction be ekta the Supreme Court law power. Advisory means it can advise the president, okay? It can advise even the Prime Minister and anyone for that matter. It can advise. The president may seek advice under Article 143. But in the case of the president, it is not binding on the president, which means the president doesn't need to listen to the advice of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ki advice grow president bhabyo and then tai law gole law na law gole na law. Kali advice ekla mangyo le koi. And then review jurisdiction. Review jurisdiction, which means it can review its own judgments. There's been a lot of changes. We talked about the Peribari Union case and the Kesavananda Paradi case, right? Preamble is not a part of the Constitution. Preamble is a part of the Constitution. Can the Constitution be amended? Sometimes it's no, sometimes it's yes. But again, it's yes, that it cannot be amended in such a way that it ceases to be a so forth. Like, review tan nichor judgment be, at the end of the day, they are human beings, right? They can make mistakes and they can feel like something is better than the other. So this is a jurisdiction that they have, jurisdiction, the power, the extent of their power. They are the ones that review their own judgments, okay? They keep on reviewing, they keep on changing. With the change in times, maybe transgender count, kiki count, same-sex marriage. Recently, one of the gay rights activists, he filed a petition in the Supreme Court seeking legalization of same-sex marriage, which wasn't given by the Supreme Court, saying same-sex marriage cannot be allowed. So, but after some years, same-sex marriage might be legal in India. Okay, So it can review its own judgment. And what is curative jurisdiction? Curative means cure, right? Cure. So, for example, let's say the Supreme Court convicts a person, gives him a punishment, a life sentence or something, but later on it is discovered that evidence kun pa paise, na, or the person was never given a fair opportunity, let's say. So the person can file a review petition. Please review it. Na. But again, it is dismissed. Okay, review petition is not accepted. But if there is a clear and exceptional, clear miscarriage of justice, the person again may file a curative petition. Means curative means last with the curative, the Supreme Court is obligated to listen to it. The final cure, na, in case miscarriage of justice now the Supreme Court can take a look at it, can take a look at the cause, and then may make a different judgment, may reduce his sentence, may do this and that. A curative jurisdiction would be another feature of the Supreme Court. I say corrects miscarriage of justice only in exceptional cases. It happens very rarely, but it is also another jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Okay, it can cure its own mistake, let's say. That's the best way to put it. It can cure its own mistake. It can review its own judgments. It can advise the president, right? It can hear cases from the High Court, or it can directly deal with issues relating to center and states. So these are the 5 jurisdictions of the Supreme Court, the powers. Okay. Now, writ jurisdiction. I think we have covered that. Supreme Court and High Court. When it comes to writ jurisdiction, Supreme Court covers the entire India. Okay. So in terms of territorial limit, the writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court is more than the High Court. Okay. Now, judicial review and judicial activism. Now, judicial review, I've explained it, is the power of the judiciary to examine whether laws and executive actions are constitutional. It reviews laws and executive actions. It checks whether the law is constitutional or not constitutional. Judicial review is very, 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 very important. Okay, it's very important. Every time the central government passes a bill, once the bill becomes an act, because it has no involvement of the Supreme Court, right? The Lok Sabha will introduce the bill, then we go to the first reading, second reading, and so forth, and lastly, it is sent to the other house, then it is approved, and that bill becomes an act. Once it becomes an act, it is subject to judicial review. The Supreme Court will review it. If it feels like the act is alop dhila ase, alop galti ase. So that's the power of the judiciary. And judicial activism. Judiciary actively protects constitutional values where necessary. I think we should have a Saturday roundtable discussion based on judicial activism. Okay, it's a very, very, very important topic, and I'm still waiting for it to appear in our mains examination. And then another topic is constitutional morality. I've been preparing these 2 topics for the past 3 to 4 years, but it's a very important topic. Okay, judicial activism. So let's consider the example of Delhi air pollution. Delhi air pollution, or let's say protection of forests, or let's say improvement of prison conditions and so forth. Supreme Court he cannot pass constitutional laws, right? It is the government. But if the government doesn't do it, it gives order, okay, to ministries, to state governments, this and that, to make laws, or sometimes it can even make temporary laws. The Supreme Court can make temporary laws. Okay, there was a there's an act. I don't remember it very clearly, but judicial activism is like the intervention of the Supreme Court in the matters of the executive, which means sometimes it is considered a exceeding its jurisdiction, which is why the central government sometimes it can be in conflict with the Supreme Court. There's been a lot of cases. Okay, even the Prime Minister sometimes complains about judicial activism. The Supreme Court is exceeding its jurisdiction. It is trying to put their noses where they don't belong. It is the job of the executive, it is the job of the union government to check the air pollution, to check the protection of forests. But why is the Supreme Court interfering so much? Nah, mind your own business. So judicial activism is about the Supreme Court not minding his own business, because it feels like it is his duty to remind the government, to pressure the government to make laws, to order the state governments to make laws. Nah, involve as a judiciary. Beyond all these constitutional duties of the Supreme Court, it also becomes an activist. Okay, sometimes. Now, again, I think we next. Yeah. Wait, okay, public interest litigation. Okay, public interest litigation. Anyone can file the PIL in the court. Okay. For example, let's say there was a social activist, and he discovers that children in village are being forced to do manual labor. Okay, so even though the activist is not one of the children, even though he's not the one affected, not the aggrieved person, he can still go to the court and file a PIL, public interest litigation, to protect the children's rights. So PIL is a kind of appeal that doesn't necessarily have to be submitted by the person that is affected, but rather, even if you're not affected, you can file a PIL, okay, against, let's say, the working of children in factories and so forth. So this is called PIL, okay, public interest litigation. That's again one of the most talked about topics these days, PIL, and it is through PIL that again Supreme Court they get involved in public matters, public interest litigation, and sometimes it can turn to judicial activism, right? It can turn into judicial review. PIL purwo, and then the problem also I have to intervene, judicial activism. I have to check the laws passed by the Indian Parliament. To take naido, manon to pass a judicial review. Now, so it's all connected this way. Now, collegium system, the system for appointment and transfer of judges. The composition: Chief Justice of India, 4 senior-most Supreme Court judges. They form the collegium. And what is its function? Its function is recommendation of appointment of Supreme Court judges. Okay, recommendation of appointment of Supreme Court judges and High Court judges. So I talked about why the collegium system is important. If it were the Prime Minister of India who appoints the judges, the judge would favor Narendra Modi. And this collegium system was established to protect the Supreme Court from the interference of the government's influence. Okay, and it also recommends the transfer of High Court judges. Now, a lot of cases has happened in which High Court la judge ekta thakise, for example, Guwahati la High Court judge ase. Now, Nagaland la government la, Assam la government, Taichung la, Koila la business profit pishi pai ase. Halibi yadi illegal kam khan gurigina ase, improper filing of GST, right, and so forth. The High Court decides that mining should be banned. High Court law judge. Okay. So Himanda ro Nifiru ba kushi banai do. To tage transfer gure de do. Alag jaga de na. Itu protect role. Even the transfer of judges be collegium ba gure. Even the transfer of judges, very sensitive. Okay. The people who work in High Court and Supreme Court, they're always like under the radar, okay, of the union government, and so even to protect them to that extent, not only the appointment but the transfer of High Court judges as well. Just give me a minute, okay? Please give me a minute. I think they changed the transformer nearby. They were making changes to it. Day before yesterday and today. So we're gonna struggle a little bit, but it's a minor problem that will be solved in a few days time. Hallelujah. Um, let's take a look at. Okay, so there's only one page left. Okay, luckily, the Comptroller and Auditor General. The Comptroller and Auditor General. You can go through it once you go back home. Okay, you can look at the video. I did not upload yesterday's video because we only completed half of part 5. So I will merge both the videos together and upload it today. Okay. The CAG is the guardian of the public purse. Comptroller and Auditor General, guardian of the public purse, puisa. Na accounting kan sob kore is he's usually IRS la thake, Indian Revenue Service, related to accounting, auditing. That's what we do in our department, right? Treasurers and Accounts Department. Mohan bhi accounting kore. So his role is very similar to mine. Accounting guru, he will check the accounts of the different departments. Every state laga tan accounts kan pura submit kore Comptroller and Auditor General again, and he will audit it, he will check the accounts, and then UTPCD he will submit the report to the Parliament. Okay, and that's how the Parliament gets to know Nagaland government ba puisa kina phelaise, kun department de kiman dise, kiman puisa chulaise, tan ge demand for grants dia the kiman 22,000 crores de kiman 1,000 crore kina phelai and all that. So udo CAG bar report ke Indian Parliament ke to CAG kina pai every state ta report ko tai collect korna tai sob compile kurina Indian Parliament ke de. Now obviously CAG isn't the one that does it personally, tai the head as it aru tala nije de kam kora manu bhagiwa nina CAG la signature rakhiwa lekhina Indian Parliament ke de. So he is the guardian of the public purse. Okay, he checks all the expenses. He checks how all the investments, all the strategies, and then he submits it to the Indian Parliament. It is only based on the report of the CAG that they can come up with new ways of granting money to different ministries, new ways of building infrastructure. Some schemes are working, some schemes are not working, and which state needs more subsidies, which state needs more insurance, everything. Tala audit tala accounts pra jane. The function though it audits the union and state accounts. That's the first point. It audits the union and state accounts. It ensures proper utilization of public funds. Okay. And then any kind of financial irregularity, puila scam issue there was this lottery scam, okay, in 19 yeah, I will mention that right after the recording is done. It's a little sensitive. So yeah, that's it. The Comptroller and Auditor General.